Hello and welcome to Tennessee Informer. I'm your host, Dave Vance. Tonight our guest is author and president of the American Policy Center, Tom DeWeese. But first it's time for announcements and updates. The Stewart and Henry chapter of the TFA will meet Thursday, September 7th, 7 p.m. at the Holly Fork Shooting Complex located at 6133 Highway 79 in Paris, Tennessee. Our speaker will be House District 74 State Representative Jay Reedy. Non-members are welcome to attend. The Stewart County GOP will hold a first ever Founders Day event on Saturday, September 30th from 11 to 1:30. Our keynote speaker will be Lieutenant Colonel retired Dewey Browder, a Vietnam veteran and emeritus professor at APSU, where he was also a member of the inaugural class of the APSU Military Hall of Fame. His speech is titled America's Founding Principles. Also, as a door prize, you'll have the opportunity to win 800 pounds of Wagyu beef on the hoof, donated by a local rancher. Transport and processing are the winner's responsibility. Tickets are $20 per plate or $35 per couple. Text 931-237-1026 or 931-614-8437 for more information. Tennessee Firearms Association Knoxville will hold its monthly meeting September 12th at the Powell Shoney's on Emory Road, I-75 exit 112. Meet and greet at 6 p.m. The meeting actually starts at 7 p.m. Once again, the address is 315 East Emory Road. The meeting will feature a briefing, introduction, and discussion of Tennessee Citizens for State Sovereignty, i.e. TNCESS, just as you've seen on this show several times, and House Bill 0726, Senate Bill 1092, an act to restore Tennessee's state sovereignty. This discussion will be facilitated by EDH Andy Andrews, Knox County leader of the Tennessee Citizens for State Sovereignty. And Andy's doing a great job out there in Knoxville for us, and we appreciate it. Once again, that website is tncss.weebly.com. If you're tired of federal overreach, go to the site and find out what you can do about it. Also, Michael Sweeney, Grassroots Engagement Director of Americans for Prosperity AFP Knoxville, will discuss AFP's current agenda and objectives. And AFP is Americans for Prosperity. For good conservative talk radio, tune in to 105.3 WDXE radio in Lawrenceburg from 5 to 6 p.m. on Mondays for the Kip Capley Show, and Wednesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. for the local GOP radio show, hosted by Chair of the Lawrence County GOP, Brandon Taylor, and Lawrence Sutton, the Secretary of the Lawrence County GOP. If any conservative organizations have any events they would like to have announced during the show, please send the information to us at the tninformer.tv@gmail.com the Friday before the show. Now to our guest, Tom DeWeese. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, I know some people in Tennessee are aware of the dangers to property rights and our freedoms in general from Agenda 21/2030. Many are not. Can you give an overview of the origins of both these programs and why people should be concerned?
Yeah, it's quite a few things there, but I'll go over it very quickly. Back in 1992, the United Nations had an Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. They had 50,000 delegates at this summit, and some of these were diplomats and UN people, but the majority of them were non-governmental organizations, private organizations, the Sierra Club, the Nature Conservancy, the Audubon Society, the World Wildlife Fund. And these guys have been working in the background at the UN. Whenever they have one of these international meetings, they have agendas, they have documents that they have, treaties, all kinds of things that they bring out. And these guys, these NGOs, help write those. They all have their own private agenda, and they incorporate that into these documents. Well, the main one that came out of this particular event was called Agenda 21. What they called it was a comprehensive blueprint for the reorganization of human society. And I mean, that pretty much tells you what you need to know about it. Maurice Strong, who was the chairman of the Earth Summit, he said, current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving high meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, air conditioning, and suburban housing are not sustainable. Now, what they did with this, they came up with a tactic to get people all over the world to voluntarily give up their liberties. And what would be such a powerful message? What they came up with was the threat of environmental Armageddon. I've had environmentalists get in my face and say, it doesn't matter how many rights you think you have if you don't have a planet to stand on. And so, this became sustainable, became the word, the idea that everything has to be sustainable to save the planet. It really is a trigger word to get you to voluntarily give up your liberty. They are using it in everything in our lives right now. Sustainable businesses, sustainable food processing and farming, sustainable cattle growers, sustainable energy, on and on and on. Everything in our society has to be sustainable. And so that's where it comes from. And people just, they hear the word sustainable, their eyes just kind of gloss over. And kind of like robots march in lockstep because we've got to go in that direction. Everybody says so. And this is what came out of the Earth Summit, was this blueprint. And step by step, they have continued to add on to that. In 2015, they created Agenda 2030. And now they got more honest, more detailed. Agenda 21, they said, was just voluntary ideas, just a good idea of how we could work in our society to protect the environment. Now they got detailed 17 different goals. And if you look through those goals, there they are, you will find very little in there that talks about the environment. You hear getting rid of poverty and the good health for everybody, and all of this kind of stuff that we're dealing with, and you begin to see that this has the thing about climate change, the warning about that, everything you hear about it. There is absolutely no science to back that up, that anything man is doing is damaging the environment or changing the climate. Climate has changed since the beginning of time. Does it all the time. We actually are in a bit of a cooling period right now, even though they're trying to tell you that we're having the hottest summer in history. Go back to 1913? It was cold. It was hotter than it is now. On and on. It does this. So they use this as an excuse to get you to give up your liberties. And now we're facing control of our energy, control of our private property. They are saying that private property ownership is basically racist. The mayor of Minneapolis said that. And they're trying to get rid of zoning for single-family homes, neighborhoods, and bring in public housing.
Section 8 housing.
Those neighborhoods. Yeah. And all of this, and we know that one of the things they want to get rid of is private transportation, and have public transportation or bikes or whatever. And how do you do that? Well, it goes into, you hear the term smart growth. And what smart growth means is that everybody, they want people to move out of the rural areas. They say people living in the outskirts of town, that's urban sprawl, and you have to drive further, and you have to use more energy and more of our resources and so forth to live there in private home neighborhoods. We get everybody moved down into the downtown and into high rises. Now they can control your energy. They can control where you go, your transportation, and you walk to work or ride your bike to the grocery or take public transportation. That's an overview of it. But as I said, there were 50,000 delegates there. And those 50,000 delegates, these NGOs, all with these agendas, they are the ones pushing the whole thing in place.
And of course, they would be the ones who get to decide when the goal has been met, if it's ever met. And I don't know, it just seems to me like, even if you look at the individual goals and you might say, okay, that's a noble goal, how much power would some organization have to have in order to accomplish that? I mean, bottom line is, and I think those of us who've followed this for very long, we know that this is essentially just communism with a green cover. I mean, absolutely. That is exactly what it is.
I'll tell you what, Dave, they haven't even changed the words from the old communist manual. I mean, really, maybe adding climate change might be one thing, but other than that, everything is we're looking for a better future for our people, and we're this is for the good of everybody, the common good, the general good, of which there really is no such thing. Our country was based on the idea the individual could decide for their own life and move forward, do what they want to do. And now they're looking at single-family homes as some kind of a racial thing that's not fair, and they put all of these Agenda 21 or these sustainable programs in place under smart growth, and take for example Portland, Oregon. They were the poster child to put smart growth in place, and they put a boundary around the city, and they said no growth will take place outside of that. It's a no growth boundary, and we'll have no urban sprawl with this. Now, over 20 years later, the size of Portland out of that boundary has barely grown at all, but the population has grown by 85%. And now they're saying, we have a housing shortage. Oh my goodness, we can't afford to have single-family neighborhoods where you've got 3 or 4 people living in a home, and you got room in the driveway for your car and a backyard for the kids. In that same space, we could put 100 families. We've got a crisis here. What we have is a crisis of over-government who should get out of the way and let people live their lives. 85% of the American people want to live in single-family homes. And your elected officials who are allowing this tyranny to be put in place are totally ignoring their constituencies and what they want, and they're listening to these special interests. You look at it, first of all, we have to understand that the way these NGOs operate is they completely surround your elected officials. Every one of these programs, whether it's bike lanes or it's some kind of a regulation on energy or it's a control on how you develop the community or whatever, every one of those kind of programs has their own NGO that is an expert at how that operates. And they know exactly how to write it up, and they know exactly what grants to go to on the federal government to put it in place. And here's what people don't understand about how this operates. These same NGOs help write those grant programs. And they put in the grant, back inside where it's not, they don't talk about it, but there are real regulations in there of things they need to do. For example, maybe your community needs some money to help improve the infrastructure under Main Street. There are pipes and there are wires there that may be 100 years old. Yeah, that needs to be fixed. So they go to the EPA or HUD or the Department of Transportation to get a grant. And the grant happens to also say that they've got to put roundabouts all over town to get rid of traffic lights, because sitting at traffic lights creates climate change and this sort of thing. And so they're having to do much more work. Much more money is being spent for absolutely nothing. That is, it's worthless. But this is the way they implement these plans.
And since citizens mostly and the legislators, a lot of the legislators are at the county level, your county mayors, your county commissions, most of them are clueless about Agenda 21/2030. They don't know anything about this. They will probably hear the term sustainable development, but they don't really know what it is. And unfortunately, like with so many other issues, there's dollars attached to this. So if they will just do this, the government's got a program that they will help them, and they're like, oh, hey, we're going to get some more free money, which of course no money's free, and they sign on to this, and they don't realize what they're doing.
Exactly. What you'll hear them say is, well, we need to take this grant money. That's our people's money, our constituents. And if we don't take that grant, we're cheating them out of their money. I hear that constantly. They're saying that. And the other thing that happens here is that lots of times in communities all over the country, they have memberships in these organizations. And as soon as you get new people elected, the city council or county commission, we're sending them off to national meetings, the National Conference of Mayors, the National League of Cities, the National Governors Association. There are all kinds of these organizations. And when you send your elected representatives there, from the podium, they're hearing these NGOs. Hey, here's the latest we've got going, and we got sample legislation for you too, and this is what's going on. And then they come home and they're met by representatives of the same groups. Hey, you got that sample legislation? Got the money for you too. It's all right here in a box. And eventually, if you hear your elected officials say this phrase, well, that's just the way it's done now. Everybody's doing it this way. That's the proper role of government. They have been brainwashed into this. Now one of us shows up and starts talking about Agenda 21 and sustainable development and so forth, and these NGOs are whispering in her ear, the guy's crazy, don't pay attention to him. You know what the Southern Poverty Law Center says about him? He's a terrorist. And this is how they cut us off, to absolutely take away our credibility. And we're not there. That is the problem. And that's what I'm working so hard to try to help people understand what this is and what to do about it. By the way, I learned, we're hearing about the 15-minute cities. And this is just them getting more honest and more detailed on the 15-minute cities of bringing everybody into downtown. Well, just recently, I learned about another one. It's called the C40 cities. And what they are calling for, this is amazing in here. They are calling for, in the C40 cities, that there will be, when this is all put in place, there will be zero meat consumption, zero dairy consumption, 3 new clothing items per person per year, and privately owned vehicles, 0. And 1 short haul return flight, less than 1,500 kilometers, I say, every 3 years. 1 short flight every 3 years. There are 14 American cities who have signed on to this. This is being put in place. And it all comes down, and again, I'm running all over the bridge here, I know, of the road with this, but this is all tied directly into the Great Reset, which means completely resetting human society. But this is where this is coming from.
Do you know the cities? Do you have a list of the cities?
Oh yeah, I do. It is Boston, Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, Miami, New Orleans, New York City, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Portland, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., and Seattle. Those are the 14 so far that have signed on to this idea.
The usual suspects, right?
Yeah, to start with, yeah. But it spreads like poison.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've got in Chattanooga, they're doing the smart cities, or excuse me, the 15-minute cities there already, and there's we'll get to that a little bit later in the program, but I mean, Tennessee is not exempt from this. We're not exempt from the green socialist here in Tennessee. They're very active. And another thing you mentioned about all these NGOs and how these people, they get newly elected and they send them off to these different events to be basically brainwashed or lied to, however you want to look at it. But all these regional growth centers, our regional growth commissions that have existed for years, and they're not necessarily bad organizations, but they are on board with all this stuff as well. And so I think that, especially when you're talking to a lot of the rural mayors, they just assume, okay, this is how it's done, and this is the plan handed down, and whether they really understand it or not, they know there's dollars tied to it, so a lot of them are for it.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing you'll hear in some places around the country, very conservative places, they'll say, there's no way that can happen here. We won't allow that to happen. Well, I don't mean to, don't be so deluded because these guys are operating in every single community in this country. And they're there in the background. And the regional councils, lots of times there are 10, 15 counties that are all there. Yep. One of the things about sustainable development programs is that it's a one-size-fits-all situation. Now you start talking about 15, 20 counties. You have different communities with different situations, different problems, different ideas, and these guys are doing this all one-size-fits-all. And and the thing is, the people who are in these regional councils are not elected by anybody.
That's right.
And and all of these things, whether it's the NGOs or the regional councils, whatever, when they are putting these projects in place, and your elected officials are allowing them to do it, particularly the regional councils, your elected officials are losing their ability to govern that you elected them to do. And I am so sick of hearing elected officials around the country saying, well, the regional council or this such and such appointed board or whatever says we can't do that. Appointed boards are created by elected officials basically to be the bureaucracies to put in place policies that they have voted for. And they don't make laws, and they aren't the boss. The elected officials are the boss. And when an elected official starts telling you, well, the board says we can't do that, what he's really saying to you is, I don't want to talk to you about this, and we're just going to do it anyway, and I'm ignoring you. That's what they're really saying. They should be there telling these appointed boards and so forth, we're your boss, and we're not going to go along with this because our constituents don't want you to. But these are cowards who are allowing that to happen, and that's something we have got to fight on the level all over the country.
We actually had a close call with that in Tennessee last year. They were trying to set up a state compact with Mississippi and Arkansas that would involve the western counties of Tennessee and some counties, I think it was 10 counties each from those states, and they were going to set up a regional council. Well, the regional council would be calling the shots, and all the county governments and metro governments within there, they would have lost their voice, which means all the people would have lost their representation. And we found out about it, and we actually we did contact, of course, the representative that was pushing it and the senator. But what really helped, and actually your organization helped, we got this information to your VP, which is Kathleen Marquardt, who lives in Knoxville. She's actually been here to speak a couple times. And she wrote a letter, and we got it in one of the local online publications. And we were able to stop them from approving this in our legislature, and the sponsor apologized, said he had no idea. Whether he did or not, the bottom line is we were able to stop it because people were paying attention, knew what to look for, but they're going to come back again, and they'll probably just try to do a little better job of hiding it. So people really need to understand Tennessee is not exempt. I mean, hey, if we're not exempt from a governor, supposedly Republican governor, trying to push red flag laws, we're not exempt from this. Agenda 21, Sustainable Development 2030. Now, how are all these tied to the Green New Deal and the Great Reset that we've heard a lot about for the last few years?
Yeah. Well, as I said, they're all exactly the same plan. Each one gets a little more honest, starting with Agenda 21 and then Agenda 2030 and then the Green New Deal. And then all of a sudden, this last year, we started hearing about the Great Reset. And Klaus Schwab, the head of the World Economic Forum, people need to understand what a dynamo this World Economic Forum is. They have all of these globalist organizations, and when they talk about the Great Reset, they're talking about completely resetting human society, every single aspect of it, what we eat, how we produce our food, how we our energy, everything, all these different plans we're looking at. These are not some misguided elected officials who just thought this was a good idea or something. This is a plan. Klaus Schwab has classes basically for people clear down to the city council level. They train some of these people to put these things in place, and then they spread them out. You've heard all about George Soros and putting these county attorneys, state attorneys, and so forth in place. And this is all part of it. They know exactly how to put this stuff in place. And now we're seeing an absolute revolution of them attacking anyone. They're attacking lawyers. They're attacking anybody who will stand up against them and defeating them and making them, taking away their credibility and so forth. And this is an extremely dangerous situation. These guys are determined that they are going to win no matter what. So, this is what we have to be aware of, and we have so many people who are either saying to themselves, well, that'll never happen here, or, well, there's just nothing we can do about it. That's the other thing that worries me the most, is you have people looking down in defeat saying, well, they're just too big, we can't beat them, and there's nothing we can do. That is a self-fulfilling prophecy if you believe that. And the good news is that I've been in this fight, this particular fight, for over 30 years. And I've seen, a lot of things happen, and I've seen a lot of people ignore what was going on because they weren't affected by it at the time. But now everybody is, and now opportunity to, there are more people ready to fight, saying, what do I do? And we've got to take advantage of that. But it's what I have seen with the people putting this stuff in place. They are terrified of us, that we will learn this, because what we have to understand is we are not outnumbered, we are out-organized, and they know it. This is a very tiny minority putting this in place, but they have done it the right way. They've gone in and taken control of the media, taken control of the election process, taking control of your local elected officials, and even in your corporations and your city council or your county, or all the different pieces and parts there. And so this is what we've got to be aware of.
So there's a couple of organizations that have been around a long time, and I'm sure that when we're going to tell the audience here in a minute that these organizations are actually involved with this, they're going to be shocked. So can you tell me how the American Planning Society and how the realtors in this country, I think the American Realtor Society?
National Association of Realtors.
National Association.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
can you tell the audience how they are helping subvert our country?
Let me tell you first of all about the American Planning Association, because they are they're planners. They're in every community. They may not be called American Planning Association, but they all work together in this.
Right, and they're old. They've been around for decades.
Absolutely, yeah. And just to give you an idea here, they put out a report a few years ago after sustainable development, or after Agenda 21 came out. They put out a report entitled "How Sustainable Is Our Planning?" Now, they will tell you constantly they have absolutely no connection with Agenda 21. Everything they do is local, local, local. Well, they put out this report. This was in, I believe it was in 1994, so a year or two after Agenda 21 was introduced. And the fifth paragraph of this article says, Vice President Gore's book, Earth in the Balance, addressed many of the general issues of sustainability. Within the past year, the President's Council on Sustainable Development has been organized to develop recommendations for incorporating sustainability into the federal government. Also, various groups have been formed to implement Agenda 21, a comprehensive blueprint for sustainable development that was adopted at the recent Earth Summit. Now, in that one paragraph, the American Planning Association joined together them, Agenda 21, the UN's Earth Summit, Al Gore, Sustainable Development, the President's Council on Sustainable Development, NGO groups, which we're talking about, with a mission of implementing Agenda 21, and the description of Agenda 21 is a comprehensive blueprint. All in one paragraph, they said that. And yet they will try to tell you that everything they're doing is just local. Now, we started to attack them several years ago. I kind of like messing with them because they're absolute cowards when you do. But their goal is to make every city in America a sustainable city in all this. And we started revealing these things about them. And they got panicked over it. And they immediately called in all their planners, and they put together what they called a boot camp to change how they're presenting planning. And I have here, they put together a glossary for the public. And I have this document here. It says, this is the introduction in it. It says, given the heightened scrutiny of planners by some members of the public. What is said or not said is especially important in building support for planning. And then they go into great detail about words you shouldn't say anymore. We just need to talk about discussions about sustainability. Don't talk about regionalism, sustainability, livability, that kind of thing. That makes these opponents see red. So don't mention all those things, but just talk about all the benefits for the community. They are liars. And because they don't, they cut out those words, doesn't mean they're going to stop imposing those things and promoting those programs. They're just lying to you to say, oh, this isn't that. That's the American Planning Association, and they believe that resources should be under the control of planners and not under the control of people. That planners should be the ones to decide what happens to property and how all this stuff is implemented. So that's these guys.
And what about the realtors?
The realtors, the National Association of Realtors. I do a kind of an audience participation program, teaching people how these NGOs, everything surround your elected officials. And I bring up a whole lot of, 30, 40 people up on stage to show, to represent all that. And I get to the end of it and I'll say, I need one more volunteer. And as that person is walking up to the stage, I will say, you are taking the walk of shame. You are the National Association of Realtors. The reason I say that is because the National Association of Realtors should be the #1 advocate for private property. What else are they going to have a business for if they don't have private property? They sell homes. That's what they do. And yet they have locked in with all of these planners to put together the new smart growth communities and all of that. They have a whole section on their web page about this, how we need this is the way of good planning. And when I first put out an article about this, I had a realtor in Florida who got really upset about it all, and she called them. She wanted to have a conference call with me to try to straighten them out. They wouldn't even talk to me about this, and which is typical. And but this is the one organization that ought to be in there fighting for us with everything they've got. And there they are. They're taking grant money, and but what are they going? How are they going to exist when you're finding now we've got over 40% of housing in this country now, what were single-family homes being converted to rentals, and so this is, and what you're finding. I'll just add this in real quick too. BlackRock. And BlackRock is the wealthiest corporation in the world. They're into trillions. And they are using these programs, sustainable stuff, to reduce private property. And they buy up a lot of property in cities and so forth to turn it into the smart growth programs. And we just found out that, like in California, some other places where they're really having these problems with the wildfires, the word resiliency is now being put into a lot of the programs, and they are working with insurance companies are now refusing to maybe insure some people who live in the path of these wildfires, and they're raising the insurance rates so high people can't afford to pay it anymore. They have to give up their homes. BlackRock is coming in there now and buying these homes for a song and turning it all into the program. So there you have it.
Now, you mentioned earlier that Portland was a smart city, started 30 years ago, something like that?
20-some years ago, yeah. It was one of the first ones, yeah.
So now we've got the 15-minute cities like we have. That's an issue that they're fighting in Chattanooga right now. And then you mentioned the C40 cities. Are the C40 cities, is that like if they get what they want, is that essentially completing the Green New Deal / the reset? Or are they going to go beyond that? Is that their final blueprint? Do you know?
I don't think they've got a final blueprint here until they've got total control. But yeah, it's kind of the cap to the thing. We're talking about what's going on with the farmers around the country and what they're doing, control of the food supply and where that's all to lead to. And then this comes out, this C40 cities where they're going to have zero beef consumption, zero dairy consumption. And, where's that coming from? It is coming from what they're doing, across farmland across this country. Our farmers are in absolute dire straits right now. We're losing thousands of farmers every year who cannot do it anymore. What you'll end up with are corporate farms that these global corporations, and their goal here in doing all this will be to dictate to us what food that you will have. In fact, clear through the Great Reset, in every case, you heard Klaus Schwab say that you're going to own nothing and you're going to be happy about it.
Right.
What they're really going to end up, their goal is to create a society in which government from the top will dictate to you what kind of products you need, what kind of food that you will eat, what kind of transportation you need. You will comply to all this. Once they get digital currency, if you are not complying to this, if the products that you're buying in the stores right now, you're buying too much meat and not enough vegetables, that shows that you're not a good little environmentalist, and that affects your private profile, and you're shut out of society. And once they have this global currency, if you are not complying properly, they can press one button and everything you have disappears. So this, step by step, they have thought it all through. And the very fact that I am saying these things, of course, makes it a crazy conspiracy theory, not true. But I'm getting all of it from their documents. And I have jokingly said many times that I'm not creative enough to make this stuff up. I'm just quoting them. And if it sounds crazy, it's because they are. And we have got to stand up to this and understand what it is we're facing.
Well, they're not just crazy, they're evil. So the mission of the American Policy Center is obviously to educate the public on this. And how do you help citizens to fight back?
We, first of all, getting the information out, that's been key. We've been doing that for 30 years now. What we have discovered, so many people just don't know what to do and how to go after this. And a couple of years ago, I coined the term building a freedom pod. And the idea is working in your community with your city council, your county commission. Don't worry about the community next door. Worry about yours and set a goal to protect private property. First of all, the reason that I have been so involved in private property over all these years as I've been fighting this is that I learned over that time that sustainable programs cannot be imposed without destroying property rights. If property rights are protected, they can impose these policies. And so we are working, to do things to help people to build a strong protection of private property rights against these corporations taking the land, against the solar panels, solar farms and wind farms and all of that, where they're coming in, intimidating and pressuring property owners to join into this thing and educate them on what to do about it. But to build a freedom pod, what you need to do, first of all, you've got to know your enemy. You've got to know what you're up against. So the number one important thing to do here, first of all, you need to get 3 or 4 people who will be kind of the head of it. And their job is to begin to build a team. They don't have to do all the work. They need to find people who are good at different things and begin to pull them together and just kind of keep it going. And the first thing is research. You need to research. Get into, find out who the players are in your community. What NGOs are working there. These NGOs are national and international organizations. They're working in communities all over the world, and they've got a record. And you can find out who they are, who their leadership is, where their money comes from, all those kind of things. Also, Take a look at your comprehensive plan. Every community's got one now, and look at what it says, what it's doing, who's affected by it, where is it, where are the grants coming from, and so forth. Do you have something in there that says something about we're going to get rid of meat and so forth? And one of the important things, the other thing is you get about 4 or 5 people to volunteer to become what we call the watchers. They go into every public meeting and just sit there and listen to what's going on. You will be amazed at what you learn doing that. You'll begin to figure out, almost on every city council or county commission, there's at least one guy who's the leader, and elected officials there to pull all this stuff together. You'll see them interacting with other people there. The only other people you're going to see at those meetings usually are going to be the NGOs. They're there, we're not. But you can begin to see who the players are and bring that back with the researchers, pull that information together. Then you get what we call the agitators or the spokesmen for your organization, the best speakers, 3 or 4 people, and using this information. And one of the things I tell people, do not rush in there and start saying, accusing your elected officials, you're implementing UN Agenda 21. I tell people in my talks about that so they have the background and understand what's going on. But if you rush in there and start accusing them of that and being angry and yelling at them, then if they've got a trap door under where you're standing there, you're gone. The NGOs are whispering in their ears. They're telling the guy's a nut, don't pay attention to him. So you organize this carefully. Look at the policies themselves. Why are you opposed to this specific policy? And first of all, understand you cannot save the republic in one day. You have got to take this carefully, steady, piece by piece. Start small. Take a little piece of it. Why are you opposed to this particular thing? Is it going to affect your property rights? Is it affecting your energy? Whatever that may be, bring that out and explain why this is a bad thing. Do it in a reasonable way. And either they listen to you or they don't. If they don't, now you organize other folks to begin to get the message out. You need to have a media team and getting news releases out, showing what's going on. I have a group down in Shreveport, Louisiana that has done a magnificent job of this. They were originally told by a county city councilman, well, you're nice boys, but you're not going to have any effect on this. There were only 5 of them at the time. Today, they went after this. It's around Caddo Lake down there out of Louisiana and into Texas. And they were going to be told that they couldn't have private boat docks, for example. They put together a flyer with a photograph of one of their boat docks with a circle with a slash through it and an introduction in there of why what was going to happen here. They went door to door and delivered these. They got the message out. They started a social media page. And they began to that's where they would put their information. I understand that the local news media probably isn't going to report on what you're doing, but you ought to open up a conversation with them, but go around them. We've got people now organizing their own newspapers that are having an effect. I'll give you an example. I had a table where I was going to speak in Ohio, and a lady came in the front door and she said, "Can I put some of these on your table?" She had her local newspaper that she had created. I said, "Yeah, sure, put them right there." I was shocked as people came in the door and they went, here it is, oh good, here it is. They were excited to see it. Same thing's happening in Southern Virginia. A guy started out in 1 county. He's now in 3 counties putting out 85,000 issues every month. People coming there waiting for it to get it. They're hungry for this news. And we've got a lot of people now looking to start their own newspaper. You've got people who have never been active before. They don't know what to do. What do you do with them? They can be a body sitting in a chair in city council meeting, get 100 people there every time. And that makes them real nervous when you start to do that. Yeah. Look at the victims. The victims as you're doing this research, look at the people who are going to be victims by these programs. Go into those neighborhoods and knock on their doors and tell them what's going to happen. Recruit them. Get them into your movement. You can get minorities in that you might not have had before, other people who've never been involved in things, and you can begin to build your movement that way. And of course, you got to also work on getting good people elected. And one of the things you don't want to do, if you've got somebody on your city council who's a really good person, who's really doing it all right, one of the things that we do all the time is say, well, go get them, and you leave. You go home, I got things to do.
Right.
Do you want to be the only person trying to take all this on? They need to have support behind them. That's where these activists come in. That's where your research comes in. You supply them with these things. You build a team, a permanent infrastructure for fighting back. You don't wait until something crazy comes up and says, anybody know where this came from? By the time you ask all those questions, they've got it in place. So you know ahead of time, and you might learn early. One of those watchers might hear your county commissioner saying to one of the NGOs, hey, you know that program we talked about to do such and such? Going to do it this month. You know about it ahead of time, and can begin to fight on it. So these are, this is very, very basic, to get into it, but it's a start, and you can begin to build from it. And some folks who have done it have had some victories, and I'm working to build a team to help them from the national level, because as I mentioned to you earlier, I found that when I go out and speak on this and people get excited and want to do it, and then I leave and there's nobody there to push it. I'm now going to work to build a team to help bring them new tactics, bring them new ideas. And by the way, a new tactic we came up with that I'm really excited about. I'm working with a really great activist out in California and another great one in Minnesota. And the one in California told me he had created the 244 plan. What's a 244 plan? He created this in his community when the local planning division was going to create yet another one of these really crazy, wild green programs. The 244 plan was 244 questions to ask on this thing in detail about the plan. And they asked all these questions. They sent them in mail and so forth, and they couldn't answer any of these questions. The city council ended up throwing out the plan and firing the guy who couldn't answer the questions. Just 2 weeks ago in Minnesota, I had told this to an activist there that I've been working with, and he went into a city council meeting. They were going to put another plan together for yet another major solar farm there. And he had 5 or 6 questions that he asked them. And he said that the head of the planning commission had the dumbest look on his face he's ever seen. And where the other city councilmen were sitting there with their arms folded, not what's going on here, we're not going to address this. The audience got behind him and started saying, yeah, we want to know the answers to these questions. Now we're working on getting that information out to the public, that here's what they want to do, and they can't answer any of these questions, and we're going to stop that plan as well. This is a new tool that I'm going to take these 244 questions, which were very specific to this one program, and take like maybe 15 that would be more of a general thing. And this we're going to get into the hands of local activists across the country. Local activists who are just starting out and don't really understand exactly how to move forward. I'm trying to get easy things into their hands that they can do, and then they can build from there, and as they get more used to it, they'll get bolder. But this is how we're going to start to build this and get it done.
So pretty much in any county, you're going to have NGOs involved. That's the non-governmental organizations. And you're going to have, your county is going to be part of a regional growth commission or whatever. And so you can probably, if you look through those documents, you can see some things in those documents that are probably going to concern you. And then, the planning associations, you need to look there and see what they're pushing. And then, of course, the realtors. And I know that's really going to be, and more people need to know that, and they need to start asking those questions of the realtors. Why are you guys supporting this?
Exactly.
So,
one of the things that bothers me about this, Dave, is the National Association of Realtors are making all the rules for realtors all over the country. They're a private organization. A lot of these organizations I've already mentioned are 501c3 private organizations. They're not government, so they don't have the right to tell realtors exactly how they operate, so forth. Somewhere back in history, some realtors put together the National Association of Realtors. Okay, realtors, get a backbone and start a new one. The realtors are always saying to me, well, we won't be able to use all the programs there, how they list our homes and so forth. We won't have all that. Well, start a new one. In most cases, the realtors are selling in one community. In most cases, some are more, but in most cases are that. So you can do your own listing program and so forth in your community. Back in the 1970s, I owned a company that was one of these door-to-door delivery operations. You put things in coupons and circulars and so forth in plastic bags, put on the doorknob. I had 2 realtor companies come to me, and we put together what we called the Treasure Chest of Homes. It was a booklet, had all their homes listed in there, and we delivered them all door to door all over the county in one day, and they couldn't get to their phones fast enough. They just rang off the wall. But they never followed up on it because they said, well, our customers think we need to be posting this in the newspaper, and so we can't afford to do both. But did they ever have that kind of calling and people coming at it with the newspaper? No. So get creative, stand up and represent your own industry. Don't let them kill it, and fight back. This is all these different, there's so many organizations, corporations, and so forth. The Chamber of Commerce is supposed to be there to protect local business. They are also going along with all this smart growth stuff. Yeah. These are where we've got to attack in all these places.
Yeah, we're being attacked on multiple fronts, and a lot of people don't realize it. I mean, multiple fronts at all times, and it's been going on for years. So, we can't just fight on one front at a time. We've got to learn to fight on multiple fronts as well. Now, here in Tennessee, we've taken some action with the passage of on this issue with the passage of legislation last year that's now in Public Chapter 479. And this is, I'm going to read this is not too long. This is a bill that was passed last year. Now, I mentioned earlier that Chattanooga right now, they're fighting that 15-minute city issue. I guess they passed the plan, although this law had already passed. And as I understand it, there's different groups in Chattanooga that are opposed to it. So they do have a law they can use. But just because you have a law that says an entity can't do something doesn't mean that they just automatically stop, all right? But I want to read this. So we do have some ammo here in Tennessee. And this was passed in the Senate, or sponsored in the Senate by, Frank Nicely, and in the House by Dennis Powers. Anyway, let's go here. It talks about, it says, as used in this section, political subdivision means a local government entity, including but not limited to a municipality, metropolitan government, county, utility district, school district, public building authority, and development district created, existent pursuant to the laws of the state, or any instrumentality of government created by one or more of the named local governmental entities. This state and its political subdivisions shall not adopt or implement policy recommendations that deliberately or inadvertently infringe or restrict private property rights without due process, as may be required by policy recommendations originating in or traceable to the United Nations or a subsidiary entity of the United Nations, including but not limited to Agenda 21, adopted by the United Nations in 1992 at the Conference on Environment and Development, which you started us out with tonight. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, introduced at United Nations Summit in 2015. The United Nations proposal to reach net zero emissions by 2050, or any international law or ancillary plan of action that contravenes the Constitution of the United States or the Constitution of this state. Since the United Nations has accredited and enlisted numerous non-governmental and intergovernmental organizations to assist in the implementation of its policies relative to Agenda 21, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, net zero goals for 2050, and its related plans and initiatives, this state and its political subdivisions shall not enter into an agreement, expend any sum of money, or provide financial aid to those non-governmental and intergovernmental organizations as described in or promoted by such plans and initiatives. And it says, Section 2, this act takes effect upon becoming a law, the public welfare requiring it. And so we have some teeth here in Tennessee on this issue. And the other thing that, one of the reasons I wanted to read this off for everybody was so that they understand, look, you know, this is not just Tom and Dave that are paranoid about something that doesn't exist. This is a real deal. Our legislators had enough concern about this to pass this law, and kudos to them for it. I give them a lot of grief, but kudos to them for this one, okay? Now, I don't recall the committee in the House where I watched the video, and I apologize for not having this ready to post. Those people in Tennessee will know exactly who I'm talking about here in just a second. They will recognize the name. But in that committee, when this bill was going through that committee, the lead socialist Marxist Democrat in our state, Justin Jones, was protesting the passage of this bill. If you didn't understand anything else Tom had to say tonight, understand that Justin Jones opposed this law. Therefore, this must be a good law. Okay, so look guys, just remember, in Tennessee, there's no more of your daddy's Democrats, okay, or your grandpa's Democrats. You've got three categories. You've got your uninformed, your misinformed, and your Marxist. And your uninformed and your misinformed help elect the Marxist. Now on the Republican side, we have to be careful because we got a lot of those guys who just do whatever the chamber wants. And remember, the chamber's in on this as well. So know that we do have a law in Tennessee that can help us. It's not going to cover everything. And hey, and the bottom line is, you in whatever community you're in, you have to do some research and know what's going on in your county to keep this stuff from actually being passed. Just because there's a law against it doesn't mean somebody won't slip one on you. And if you don't fight it, you're going to be stuck with it.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to tell you, as you're reading that law that you have is far superior to the one that was passed in Alabama several years ago. Now, Alabama was the first and had been the only state that had passed such legislation. But what I found weak about that was it was too general. But yours, I mean, it goes right into it. Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, anything associated with these programs, and the Green New Deal and smart growth and everything's mentioned there, which the Alabama bill didn't have. And so, what you get local activists, and that's where these researchers need to really get into it, is look at the language in the programs proposed, in the comprehensive plan, whatever it may be, and look for that language that is identical out of one of those UN plans or the other ones we're talking about. And now you can stand up and say, this is illegal, and start spreading that word across town that what they're doing is absolutely illegal. And one of the things we have to do is make these elected officials responsible for their own actions. And they have got to feel pain for supporting these things. Ways to do that, you're going after their reputation. As you're getting it out, they're putting up an illegal bill or getting them out of office, whatever the case may be. Make them responsible for what they're doing, because these NGOs surrounding them are doing exactly that. They are making them feel pain if they don't go along with what they want done. They threaten them with getting them out of office and everything else. We have got to have an equal force that is there. And I understand that people are going to say, well, they've got all this money and their people are paid to be there. And so absolutely true. But we are citizens in that community. They call themselves stakeholders. They're not stakeholders. They're carpetbaggers. You are the stakeholders. You're the one that has to live under it. And so we have got to get that passion behind it. One of the things we've had big success on over the last year or so are in school boards. where angry moms are standing up against what they're doing to their children, against critical race theory and various other things, and they're having successes. We've gotten people fired in the election, in the school situation and so forth. Now we're talking about, you're a property owner, you're a person there, your whole life is being affected by this. Can't you get the same passion about that as you do about your children? Because where are your children going to live? What are the rights your children are going to have?
What are they going to eat?
Giving them all up here, you know?
What are they going to be allowed to eat?
Exactly. Yeah. You want them to eat bugs? Stand up with that passion and fight this. And now you've got a law in the state of Tennessee that says it's illegal to put these things in place. That's the huge foundation that 49 other states don't have that strong. In Alabama, we did win a fight on it, even though I knew it was a weak bill, a weak law. But in Biola Battery, when a bunch of environmentalists were trying to put in this environmental tourism thing there that was going to affect their industry, their property rights, everything, the city council said, what do we do? What do we do? And finally, I have to say, somebody who'd been to one of my speeches said, Agenda 21, that's what this is, and they used the bill, the law that they had, saying this is illegal in this state, and they won. Now, you've got a much stronger bill. You should win a whole lot more battles. You could stop this whole thing if you fought it right.
Now, you have a handbook on this, as far as being an activist about this issue. I apologize, we don't have it to post up here.
This probably comes up back. Oh, no, it does come up front ways. This is our activist handbook, how to fight back in your community. This is how to build freedom pods. A lot of the things I just went over is all in here. The first half is details on how to fight back, how to organize, so forth. The second half has a lot of background information, as we've gone over today. It also has sample legislation. I have 5 bills on how to protect property rights that were written by state legislator up in the state of Washington, Matt Shea, and he gave them to me, and several other tools. We've got resolutions for the protection of property rights and various other things. Why conservation easements are dangerous, and 10 things you need to know about them. And now the next thing that I'm going to do is put together a national communication system with what I'm going to call a Freedom Pod Insiders Report. And any new tactics that we have, any new ideas, anything we can share, we're going to start putting that out. And I want to put together a monthly conference call where people can ask questions and we can help them out. I've been on the road too much to be able to do all this stuff up till now, but come next month, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. And we're going to build a force in this country, and we're going to stand up and stop this. We can win this fight. Do not look down in defeat and say, it's too big, we can't do it. That becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you don't do anything. Stand up and fight, and we can restore the republic that our founding fathers so brilliantly put together for us. Think about this. They fought the most powerful force on earth, the British government, and they won. We're going to stand back and say, golly, we can't beat Klaus Schwab. Give me a break. The guy is the perfect James Bond villain. We can beat these guys by standing up in our own community, and it'll spread to the next community and the next community. Then it'll go up to the county. It'll go up to the state legislature. Your state legislatures have much more power than they understand, and we can begin to get better people there, and we can begin to win these fights. Not going to happen overnight, but we've got to start somewhere, and we've got to start today.
And I think people just knowing kind of the key words and phrases to look for, I think that'll help a lot. Now, there's another book, and I know I talked about this earlier before we started. There's a red book. I think it's Sustainable Development, What You Need to Know, or something along that. What's the one I'm talking about? It's called
Sustainable, The War on Free Enterprise, Private Property, and Individuals. And it has all the details of all these things we've talked about today, the programs, the NGOs, how they operate, all that kind of stuff. Is a good background. It also has a really important chapter in it at the very beginning on why private property is so important, why our founding fathers considered it the most important right that we could have. You can have the right to free speech, but if you don't have your own property to stand on to say it, how are you going to say it? So we need that private property to give us, and it's also the source of personal wealth, how to build personal wealth. It's why the U.S. became such a wealthy nation so quickly. So anyway, yeah, all those things are there. And at our website at americanpolicy.org, and you can see the books. You can see we got a 30-year archive of articles on there that give you all the background on all this stuff.
Well, so we haven't got, have you ever been to Tennessee to speak?
I've been there. It's been a few years.
So we need to get you back.
Please.
Okay, we need to get you.
Yeah.
I'll get with you offline, and you know, I know a few people in different parts of the states, and we can look at the state and we can figure out some potential dates, and maybe we can get you to come here and maybe hit a few places.
Absolutely, we'll do it. Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for being on. Thanks for all you do. Really enjoyed it. And the audience, I'm sure, the ones who didn't already know about it, they learned a lot tonight. So thanks again. Thank you everyone for watching. And if you enjoyed the program, please hit the like button and subscribe. Our guest next week will be author and talk show host Brandon Howes, the host of Worldview Weekend and other very informative online radio programs. We will remember those lost on September 11th since then and discuss what, if anything, we have learned in the last 22 years about the Islamic threat in America. Hope you will join us. Good night. Thanks again for watching.